So I'm in California right now, which is why my background is different, and we're not in the same place. But we, of course, the show must go on, and we have to watch this very enlightening video of Jordan Peterson.
Wait, are you going to play the whole thing?
Let's play part of it. Let's play part of it and see how we feel about it and see how much.
Will there be any audience left? Will there be any audience left when you're done?
So this is Jordan Peterson telling Ben Shapiro about. Well, the title of the video is Jordan Peterson challenges Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and determinism. So we thought it would be good for the philosophy segment. So let's watch a couple minutes. We're doing the screen share, so we can pause at any time that the spirit moves you.
I do want to throw out there that the way that Ben Shapiro is in this is often the way that I am while Ben is talking.
Oh, fair enough. Well, let's get started.
Part of what happens in the New Testament, as far as I can tell, is that what Christ says, so he's trying to transcend the rule structure, right? Not because there's anything wrong with the rules. They're a necessary precondition for discipline, which is actually why I wrote 12 rules, right? It's like you need rules, but rules conflict and they don't always apply. And so there has to be an ethic underlying the rules, and you should have more respect for the ethic than for the rules.
Right.
Okay, Christ's idea, and this is part of the idea of the reestablishment of paradise, is that you should orient yourself towards the good. And that's something like an alliance with God. And then that you should tell the truth. And that's the ethic that generated the rules to begin with. Okay, and then we could be serious about this, you know? We could say, well, how do you adjudicate the reality of that claim? All right, so then we might think, well, we already walked through the fact that the heroes of the past acted on potential to extract out the world of actuality. And if they did that properly, then the world they extracted was good. And that is a divine principle. And then we might say, well, is it a divine principle? And you might say,
I just want to leave it as a cliffhanger here for a second. So far we've learned that the heroes of the past extracted actuality from potential.
And Ben Shapiro says,
Yeah, that's probably the way to respond while you're listening to this. Okay. So yeah, if they, I believe we just heard that they extracted actuality from potential, and if they did it right, it was good. So let's, I think that's correct. Let's keep going.
Say, well, what is it that's acting through people in the good? Like the Christian theological answer to that would be the logos, right? That's the idea. That's the idea of the Holy Spirit, roughly speaking.
Right.
You might think, well, is that a real thing? It's like, well, to me, it's real the same way that consciousness is real. And we don't know the role of consciousness in determining reality. But even if you're an evolutionary biologist, and this is so interesting because the evolutionary biologists actually differentiated themselves from Darwin on this point. Like Darwin was very, very forthright in his claim that sexual selection was as powerful as natural selection, or even more so. And so here's where that goes. And because that brought consciousness into the world as an active player, the materialistic evolutionary biologists ignored that for like 150 years and only concentrated on natural selection, where they could play, well, this is all chance.
Right.
It's like sexual selection is not chance. Okay, so here's a hypothesis. Human beings separated themselves from chimpanzees. One of the reasons they did that was because human females are sexually selective. Chimps aren't. Female chimps in estrus will mate with any chimp. The main chimps, the dominant ones, chase the subordinate males away. So they're more likely to have offspring, but it's not because of female dominance.
Right.
Now, human females have done this whole different thing, is that they have hidden fertility, and they're much more likely to go after guys who have climbed up the hierarchy. So let's say heroes will give the women some credit for intelligence, right? And say that that's what they're after, even if they're using wealth and so forth and status as a marker. They're actually using those as a marker for competence.
Yeah,
and I think the evidence. I think the evidence for that is clear. Okay, so you might say, oh well, it was human female conscious choice that selected us Okay, and you think, well, that's not random. That's not random at all. It's the farthest thing from random that there is. And that means consciousness is making its choices with regards to what propagates. But then it's even more complex than that. So here's what happens among men. The men all get together in their hierarchy. They posit a valued goal. They all accept that as the goal, because otherwise they wouldn't be cooperating.
Right.
Then they arrange themselves into a hierarchy, and they let the most competent guys lead because they want to get to the promised land. They want to get the most competent leaders leading.
Right.
Competent defined by that value. Okay, so here's what happens essentially. The men all get together and vote on the good men. And the good men are then chosen by the women, and those are the people who propagate. And so it's like men are voting on which men get to reproduce, and women are going along with the vote and being even more stringent in their choices, let's say. And so then what you get is that the consciousness that through its active expression transforms the potential of the world into actuality also selects the direction of evolution. Right, and that's where the meme, Dawkins' term, turns into the biological reality. It's not just, and so this is
like
something
that.
that's
That's
so
good.
cool
Yeah.
about Dawkins. It's like, I've often thought this about Dawkins, is if he would push his thinking to the limits, he would fall right into Jung. Well, and then he'd be lost, of course, because that's a whole other universe. But if you take that meme seriously, like, and I mean really seriously, you think, there's some ways of conceptualizing that become so all-encompassing that
Powerful
they,
hardwire themselves.
that's right. They start to become an actual force of evolution itself. And so then here's the case you could make. Consciousness extracts the proper world of being from potential through truth, and then it's good. It's like, okay, that's a hard one, man. That manifests itself in human beings at the individual level.
Consciousness extracts actuality from truth.
Ben, I told you that the other day, and you don't pay attention.
Oh, were you just saying it and I was going,
Mostly, there's a cat over here creating chaos.
Yeah. Got to keep the cat of, I think that Jordan Peterson writes about that. Got to keep the cat of chaos at bay. Okay, so
No,
consciousness.
he says that men vote on the top men, and then women choose the top men. Did you notice that?
Yeah, he said the women go along with the vote, except they're more stringent.
No, before that, he said the women choose.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
It's all right. I'm still hung up, and I mean, this is my fault because I really should have been paying attention when you tried to explain this to me yesterday. But I'm really,
I know.
I'm really hung up about how consciousness extracts actuality from truth. So
Look, if you don't understand it, I can't explain it to you.
yeah, fair enough. All right, let's keep going.
Level of individual consciousness. That's the logos within. That's the metaphysical foundation of the idea of natural right and responsibility. Okay, that's a bloody killer idea. That's expressed in the hero of heroes, that idea. That hero of heroes is the driving force behind human evolution. So not only do you get the action of the logos metaphysically as the process that extracts order out of chaos at the beginning of time, you also get it as the major driver of evolution. And so then you ask, okay, then what kind of reality does that have? Because you chase consciousness back, and like it disappears into the mystery of the past, and we have no idea what its relationship is with matter. But it's the force that gives rise to the cosmos and drives evolution. It's like you're getting pretty close to God there.
Yeah,
even just pragmatically speaking.
And you're certainly, not close to, but in the midst of an argument about free will, because obviously if you make the hard determinist argument that free will doesn't exist and that consciousness is merely a sort of trick that your brain is playing on itself, then how does culture propagate? How do these memes propagate? How are people choosing? Sexual selection and natural selection become one and the same as soon as you boil sexual selection down to natural selection. Right?
Well, and also I think that the free will argument.
Let me see. So we had Peterson, something sexual selection, something logos, something something consciousness, and this
Free
is getting at
will.
pretty close to the existence of God. Well, you guys missed the perfect explanation when I was muted, but this is the best I can do now. And then Shapiro says, well, now we are not just in the close to, but we're in the midst of free will, something, something, because if consciousness is deterministic, how can there be sexual selection?
I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe it'll get clearer in the last couple minutes. Let's see.
See why Harris gets tangled up in that, because, well, first of all, deterministic arguments are unbelievably powerful. And when we use deterministic models for many things, they really work.
Right.
So you could say, well, we're going to use that by default. It's like, fair enough. We're going to deviate from that with care. But I don't see people as driven like clocks winding down. First of all, we don't wind down in any simple way. We're dissipative structures. To use, he wrote Schrodinger, what is life? A human being is a dissipative structure. We're not an entropic structure like a clock running down. I mean, we are in some sense, but as living beings, we pull energy in. And so we're not winding down like a deterministic structure. We're something other than that. And the way we treat each other is as logos, as far as I can tell. The way I treat myself,
Right.
if I'm going to be good to myself in the proper sense, is that I'm an active agent of choice confronting an infinite landscape of potential and casting that potential into a reality for good or for evil.
Right.
Okay. And if I treat myself that way, then I have proper respect for myself and proper fear of myself, because I can make bad decisions and warp the structure of reality. And I think if you read Frankl, for example, or Solzhenitsyn, and you see how your bad decisions can warp the structure of reality, then that wakes you up, right? Okay, so there's that. If you don't treat yourself like an active agent, imbued with logos, then your life doesn't go well. But more, if you don't treat other people that way, they do not want to play with you. If we set up societies that aren't predicated on the idea that people are like that, then the societies they dissolve or they become totalitarian almost instantly. So then I would say, well, you've got the problem of determinism. It's like, fair enough, man. How do you reconcile the fact that if you lay out a society at every level of analysis on strict deterministic grounds, it fails? So doesn't that mean your hypothesis has a flaw? I mean, maybe not. Maybe you can say, no, the facts are independent of the ethical consequences.
Right, exactly.
Right?
This is where the truth pragmatism question comes back into being, right? Because Sam would say, well, it's true regardless of what the effect is. And you would say, well, it's obviously not true if morals are constructed for a pragmatic reason, and if this pragmatism doesn't work, if it falls into nothingness.
Well, it also depends to some degree on how you're willing to test your hypothesis. Because I might say, well, if your hypothesis is factually correct, wouldn't you assume that if people based their behaviors individually and familial and socially on that set of facts, which is basically what Sam claims about facts to begin with, if you base your ethos on those facts, wouldn't it work?
Right.
Well, he claims that that's a test. And I'd say, well, then it fails that test. It doesn't work. We have to treat each other like divine centers of consciousness in order for society to work.
Okay.
I have infinite potential.
Yeah.
That's what I gained from that.
Yeah. Okay. So Heroes extracts actuality from truth, which has something to do with sexual selection, which has something to do with God. Hi, Lucy. And
we got all the Koreans here tonight.
Yeah, for anybody who didn't catch that, the dog and the cat both come from South Korea when we lived there, so hence the Koreans. So there was that whole argument, whatever was going on there, all the stuff that the was a response to, And then what I got at the very end is an argument that I feel like I've gotten from a few intro to philosophy papers over the years. Like I actually, at least understood what was going on at the end, which was, well, if we didn't believe in free will, there'd be bad consequences. Did you get anything different out of that, or what am I missing something
Really,
here?
no.
Okay.
All
Okay.
my intro students are too smart to try to make that kind of argument. Either too smart or too well taught, one or the other.
Well, I just show up and half-ass it, and so they have a, some of mine do end up saying things like that. I feel like I've gotten a few of those over the years. And then that was actually, I gotta say, yeah, I mean, like he said it in Jordan Peterson speak that that you have to treat each other as divine centers of consciousness and stuff like that. But I think that's what he was saying, that like society can't work if we don't treat each other like we have free will. And
Okay.
that's the one thing that I actually felt like I understood in those 9 minutes. And I think that's the only thing Ben Shapiro understood either. And the reason that I think that is that was the only time that he actually responded to what Peterson was saying instead of just going, uh-huh, oh, like at the very end with that, he was like, well, okay, but like if can't it still be true? And I understand you're some kind of weird pragmatist about truth, so you don't think that, but still can't something be true even if acknowledging it would have bad consequences? Like that was actually the one point where Shapiro like crawled out and started engaging with the content of what he was saying.
So we watched 8 minutes to get to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny actually because I think the last time we watched a video of Shapiro and Peterson together, we said that
It's very similar.
It was very similar, but yeah, there's a lot about sexual selection that was somehow or another supposed to tell us something about God, and it was very unclear what the connection was supposed to be. But in that other video, it felt like Shapiro was doing the thing that like a good intro to philosophy instructor would do, where you hear the student just like babble, for a couple minutes. And then you say, okay, so what I'm hearing you say it is, and you translate it into something that's like a coherent thought so you could respond to it. But in
Did
this,
that just earlier today.
I'm sure you did. Whereas in this one, it seemed like Shapiro was acted like a just utterly defeated intro to philosophy instructor who just couldn't even come up with a way to translate it into a coherent thought. And so it's just like, oh, uh-huh, 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 okay. So maybe we can talk about
This is where you do, okay, anybody want to respond to Jordan?
Exactly. He's kind of doing the like,
hand this off to y'all.
Okay, well, maybe we can talk about free will now because you use some words that sort of reminded me of that. So let's do free will. Yeah. Fair enough. So I don't know. Are you convinced that free will is real now?
When I first watched this and Ben sent me the link and I watched it and I said, I have no idea what's happening here. What are they even talking about? And Ben said free will and determinism. And I said, how do you know? Where did you get that? How do you know? Then I watched it again and it was marginally clearer. But no, I have not been convinced of anything except that I have infinite potential.
Okay. Have you?
We should treat each other like we're divine logoses or logi or something.
Okay. And that we extract actuality from reality with consciousness.
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Well, I'm gonna go do that at the post game now. You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron exclusive post games on Monday nights, all of the patron exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.